Welcome to the Jboy Show, hosted by Jake Crain, the fastest growing sports show in the nation.
I'm Coach Hugh Freeze.
This is Super Bowl champion Brandon Graham.
Hey, this is DJ Shockley, and you're watching.
And thanks for watching the Jboy Show.
What's up, everybody? As usual, appreciate you joining us. Got another great show today. Zach Barnett, one of the top guys at FootballScoop.com, which is the premier place that coaches, you can find out what coaches are going where, who's there, breaking news as well. It's a great idea, and they've been going strong for a while. But first, I do want to give a shout-out to our partners at betonline.ag. Head over there today. Their online casino is always open. We got Major League Baseball, the NBA playoffs. We're running toward football season. Any sporting event that you want to bet on, soccer, anything like that, go to betonline.ag. The sign-up bonuses are outstanding. They're going to play the sharps. Whether you like team props, player props, they've got all that stuff, the nitty-gritty, the bets that you're not going to get from your book. They're going to have it at betonline.ag. Head over there today and tell them that Jboy sent you. My take before we get in this interview with Zach Barnett is something that we've seen happen in football, and I don't think gets enough publicity. And coaches like Nick Saban and Kirby Smart and Jimbo Fisher and head guy Lincoln Riley, these guys understand that recruiting nowadays is not just about how good of a recruiter the head coach is or how good of a recruiter his staff is. You have to have an army set up in the recruiting department, from graphics to birthday cards, to social media engagements, to structure, to evaluation. You have to have the resources in place to be able to go through all these things, go through all these prospects, and expedite the recruiting process. Gone are the days where the position coach does everything in recruiting. Nowadays, a lot of it is going to visit the school, visit the kid, talking to the kid on the phone. And there's a ton of people in the recruiting department that talk to the kid on the phone, that get to know the parents, that form a relationship. And you are only as strong as your recruiting department, which brings me to my point about Bryan Harsin and Auburn. If you look at Alabama, Texas A&M, these places have humongous recruiting departments. They have tons of people, from interns to full-time, that handle a total array of different things to help make recruiting more efficient, to be able to evaluate more players geographically, and to make it easier to be able to finish the evaluation and find out who you're going to offer. Now, though, in the transfer portal, you add a totally different dynamic to it, and you have to be prepared. If you notice what Bryan Harsin did when he got to Auburn, is he started to pump money and put resources and throw bodies at the recruiting department. That's the only way. It's the way society is nowadays with these athletes, with these prospects. It's not what have you done for me lately? It's what are you going to do for me tomorrow? How cool are your graphics? How great are the facilities? How much of a relationship I can build for you? And the more people you have in that fight, the more people you have that are able to get information to the parents or the guardians, whoever it be, grandparents, aunt, auntie, uncle, doesn't matter. That gives you a leg up, because this isn't Star Wars. The rebellion does not beat the Death Star. In order to have success in the SEC and in college football today, you have to build your own Death Star. It comes down to recruiting and roster structure. Those are the two things. And when you're looking at recruiting, like I said, don't just look at the head coach. Don't just look at the assistants. The recruiting department, it's a wing of your government. That's what it is. It has to be a huge wing. It's going to continue to grow. Now you have graphic guys getting paid big money. You have not only recruiting coordinators, whatever you want to call them, chiefs of staff, whatever, getting paid even bigger money. You now have people that are just in charge of very minute things, getting paid very, very well to be able to help identify, evaluate, get out all the paper and emails, and like I said, social media stuff there is. So understand that is a huge part of recruiting nowadays, and it's going to continue to blow up and blow up and blow up, and I don't see it stopping anytime soon. It's a good move by Bryan Harsin. It's a good move by Shane Beamer. Josh Heupel at Tennessee is in the process of doing that. Clark Lee at Vanderbilt brought in a GM. Look at Woody Womack. That's what he is. He's a GM at Vanderbilt. That's what he is. So they're going to keep adding spots, and you're only as strong as your recruiting department with a good blend of ace recruiters and winning on the field. And that's my take for today. Excited to get Zach Barnett in here. Let's talk some ball. All right, everybody, let's jump into the interview portion of today's show. As I mentioned earlier in the monologue, excited to get Zach Barnett, college football writer for Football Scoop. One of the coolest sites there is. I'm going to let him actually explain what that is. If you ever coached, you know what it is, and there's some fans that can kind of see it, but I want him to explain it. It's such a great idea. They do such a great job. They break news and all type of things from all different types of divisions. Zach, what's up, man?
Doing well. Thank you for having me.
Anytime. Well, first, before we get into it, can you explain exactly for those who don't know what FootballScoop.com is? Because, man, it's great stuff, and y'all do an array of things. But I know when I was coaching, man, I used to check it just to see what movement there is. And coaches that are looking to try and get other jobs, it's a great asset as well.
Yeah, so it started in 1999. A guy named Keith Allen was a GA at TCU. And, of course, the internet was becoming a bigger thing in modern life for everyone at that time. So he would try and get on the internet, call around looking for full-time jobs is the goal of every GA in the country.
100%.
And so he thought, if I'm doing this, there's probably 1,000 other guys like me trying to do the same thing I am. So why don't I just make a website? So he put FootballScoop.com online in 1999 and ran it kind of as a side gig in 2000 until 2007. And when he got a head coaching job and thought, I can't run the website and be a head coach at the same time. So he sold it to my boss, Scott, bought it. He was working in business at that time, bought it in 2007, and he's run it ever since. I came aboard in 2012. We have Doug Samuels is a high school head coach up in Michigan. He was hired shortly before I was, and then we just hired John Bryce, well-respected writer, last year.
Yeah, and it's amazing, man. You can find out which coaches are going where. You guys do breaking news on there as well that doesn't just pertain to the coaching carousel. It's really cool, and I really encourage everybody to go check it out. And, in my monologue today, Zach, I was talking about the way that recruiting has changed, not necessarily from a prospect standpoint, but the way guys have to fill out their recruiting departments now. I mean, looking at the SEC, and it's only moving up. I mean, graphics guys, they're hiring them left and right. People are getting hired really in the minutia of recruiting when you look at all the social media stuff you have to do, the birthday cards you have to send, not only to the kids, but to the parents and stuff like that. As long as you've covered it, and the money is getting crazy when you look at the sites that cover it and stuff like that, how much more important is a recruiting department nowadays to opposed to 15, 20 years ago where these position coaches had to do a lot of this stuff, Zach?
Yeah, it's kind of funny to say recruiting is becoming more important because that implies that there was a time when
it's the most important. Yeah, but what I'm saying. So,
yeah, I totally understand what you're saying. Recruiting has always been the lifeblood of the sport, but now it's 24/7 all consuming in a way that it really hasn't been. I mean, it wasn't all that long ago that having a director of player personnel, maybe one or two people under him was enough. Now it's its own industry. It very much, I talk to people that are in the business, and when they describe what they do to me, when they want to post a job or when they change jobs, they describe themselves as working in the front office of their program, which is obviously a term taken from professional sports, 100%. Which you didn't have anybody talking like that as recently as 5 years ago. And so you have a director of player personnel, director of recruiting. You have guys that just manage the roster, and you have, Washington State hired a guy that his job is to basically be a pro personnel type, equivalent for the college game and to monitor the portal. You've got, in addition to, creating graphics and all that stuff, it's you've got, they've got to create their own content and be entertaining.
Yeah.
Just to constantly be top of mind for these players. So to the point now, I'm not a coach, so I can't speak from personal experience. In a ways, it's probably never been worse to be a coach because you've got June officials that are going on right now. So it's year round in that regard. But at the same time, you've got staff that if you're at a big time program, you've got people that prime the pump for you in terms of, they're monitoring players, they're writing the birthday cards, they're dialing the phone numbers. So it truly is 24/7, 365 these days.
Yeah, and you got to be innovative too. I mean, it's almost a race to who has the great next idea. And really, Zach, I posed that question to you because, when you go on Football Scoop and you look, all right, well, this guy just took this job. No longer is it, hey, this guy's the new offensive coordinator here or the tight ends coach here. It's you have the graphics analyst just took a job at Bowling Green. It's just funny to see the new terms. I mean, you used to have DFO. Now you got a chief of staff, like you said. I mean, Woody Womack just took a job at Vandy to be the GM. which is a very necessary place, and they don't call it the GM, but they're going to eventually because that's what they do. I mean, I know guys that have worked at Alabama and then gone to Ole Miss and other places where their one job was to help manage that roster and to try and keep it as balanced as possible. And with the money that's flowing in college football, I mean, what was it, $7 billion to the SEC? You have resources to go out and hire a guy that can watch the grass grow if it's going to help recruiting. So I keep seeing that. It's really interesting and wanted to pick your brain about that. And also, Zach, in today's coaching world, with the amount of what technology's done, and you bring up the internet, I want to ask you about some new hires, and we can go national, but sticking in the SEC, you look at Shane Beamer, South Carolina, Brian Harsin, Josh Heupel, Clark Lee at Vanderbilt, as I mentioned, Woody Womack earlier. Are there any that really stand out to you that you think are the best ones? Because again, and I know you don't super analyze everything, but you see all this stuff come across your board. You see this movement. Is there one that kind of fits better than the other to you?
The one I really like that is probably my favorite, I guess, in terms of fit, you got to go Clark Lee Vanderbilt because everybody, when that job came open, they thought everybody said, oh, they need to go get their David Shaw, they need to go get their Pat Fitzgerald, and Clark Lee's the guy that fits that mold better than anybody living right now. I talked to someone close to the Notre Dame program, and their thinking was that he could do better than Vanderbilt. So obviously, for him to get that job, I think was a coup for Vanderbilt. And he's someone that's obviously, grew up there, played there, knows the program inside and out, knows the strengths and weaknesses. So he can mold the program into the best version of itself, I think, better than anybody. As for, the hire that I think has the best chance to one day win the SEC, that's got to be Brian Harsin. I really liked it on his end and Auburn's end. First, they're not going to try and out Nick Saban and just go get someone within the SEC family. The SEC often, I think, to its detriment, can be a little incestuous.
Good old boy network. Yeah, that's exactly
and
right.
Certainly, he's got Derek Mason as his defensive coordinator, so he's hired a lot of SEC experience. But I mean, the only real time he'd ever spent in SEC country was his 1 year at Arkansas State.
His cup of coffee there.
Yeah, so I like that. I mean, I say all the time, Nick Saban had never coached in the SEC until he got to LSU. Urban Meyer never coached in the SEC until he got to Florida. Is he going to be Nick Saban or Urban Meyer? No, that's not fair. But I like that they went outside for a fresh perspective. And I really like what it said about Brian Harsin, that he would take that job because, Nick Saban's not going anywhere. Kirby Smart's not going anywhere. Having to play those two every single year for a guy like that he felt like he'd outgrown Boise State for him. So for him to go on and take that challenge and be like, I can be the guy that hoists Auburn into the perpetual top 10 instead of the top 20. I can get Auburn back to the national championship game. I think spoke a whole lot about him as a competitor.
Yeah, it's a great point. And he's from Boise, Idaho, and went to Boise State. So I'm with you. He wanted a challenge, and I respect that because you're not going to find a harder time, especially to come to a place like Auburn with what Nick Saban's doing up at Tuscaloosa and Kirby Smart in Athens to come in there. And I agree with you 100%, Zach. And I do want to give a shout out real quick to our partners at Dynasty U. Speaking about molding, if you're trying to mold your child, friend's child, whatever, into a college athlete, and you want to get the eyes on them or the most eyes on them, you need to download the Dynasty U app right now. You can get it from the Google Play, anywhere you get your podcast. It's totally free. It's like a LinkedIn for recruits. Everything that you need a coach to see, because the coaches love this. It's more efficient for them. We're talking about the race for efficiency, the process, whatever. You have it all in one place, your grades, your highlights, your social media links, anything you want that coach to see, it can be there. It's the Dynasty U app. It's free. Go download it right now. Now, while it's free, I know there's a ton of coaches, ton of recruiting coordinators that are excited about it because nothing's worse than sitting in that room and having to go do the huddle link and click something else for this. This makes it really easy. It's really concise. That's the Dynasty U app. Go check it out today. We're here with Zach Barnett from Football Scoop, one of my favorite websites to check out, talking a little bit of everything and looking at the national landscape, Zach, because obviously, we talk a lot of SEC on here. We talk Alabama and Georgia and the up-and-comers, LSU and A&M. But what's a team outside of the SEC? We can talk Ohio State. We can talk Oklahoma, or somebody else you think that has a chance to maybe make a run at a national championship. And we can talk about it, but it's tough for me to see somebody outside of Alabama or Georgia win it this year. But do you have anybody you think could kind of sneak in there and make some noise?
Well, this isn't going to be a original thought by any means because they're going to start preseason number 1 and number 2. But I think the hype around Oklahoma is real.
Okay.
I think if they beat Georgia in that Rose Bowl in the 2017 season, I think they beat Alabama and win the national title. So I don't want to say this is their best chance at a national title since the glory days of Bob Stoops or in the early 2000s. But I think this is their best team since those times because, as we know, that was an explosive offense dragging a dead carcass of a defense around. And now, their defense was not just okay, it was a strength for them last season. And I think it'll only get better now that they've got players who have been raised in Alex Grinch's system, guys who he's recruited, their hashtag on social media is Speed D, guys who can really run and fly around and play his style of defense, to go with an offense that is, they'd have to try to not be the most efficient offense in the country. Bringing back Spencer Rattler, who I think was better than a lot of people gave him credit for last year. The offensive line, Lincoln Riley's system builds on itself into where you have really good players at every position on the field who all make each other better and are all made to look better than they probably are by best in the nation play calling. So, they're going to score 40 points a game in their sleep, and they're going to turn people over. And I think, given those two factors, I think this is the best chance he's had to have truly the best team in the country, the best since Oklahoma, as I said, 2003, 2004.
Yeah, no. And again, they're legitimate and they have legitimate players. And it's funny. We have some fans in Oklahoma and they always hit me up. They're like, listen, we love, hearing you talk about the SEC, but can you give us a Spencer Rattler breakdown, please? So they're going to be excited about this next question. You bring up Spencer Rattler, and listen, I watched the QB1 thing. I wasn't absolutely in love with the way he was off the field. And you do some growing up in college when you enter a locker room where guys are 22 years old and it's a little bit of a different lifestyle. And he may be different. I don't know him personally, but man, does the kid have talent. He can make off-platform throws. He's got good touch on the vertical. He can throw the whole shot. He's mobile, and he's got really good feel to me. He's a natural guy at quarterback, a natural thrower of the ball, and he has what I call witch ability. When you look at Spencer Rattler, what do you see?
It's funny you referenced the QB1 and his off-the-field personality. And Lincoln, he's got away with those guys.
He does.
Baker Mayfield was not lacking in confidence. Kyler Murray was not lacking in confidence in himself and wasn't shy about it. And Spencer Rattler's cut from that same cloth, if we can say that, as diplomatically as we possibly can. But yeah, I'm not a huge guy, not a guy that, he's a guy that can hurt you with his legs. But at the same time, if you're a defensive coordinator and it's 3rd and 8 and it ends in a Spencer Rattler scramble, I think you can live with that because his arm is just deadly. He can hit any throw in the field from any spot on the field. That Iowa State game, I think back to that they lost, on the road at night in the rain. He put a couple of balls that were just right there that if one of those gets caught, then they win that game, and maybe Oklahoma ends up in the playoff. But I think he threw a couple picks in that game, and the consensus was Spencer Rattler's got some growing up to do. Not really. He was pulled from the Texas game and then came back and led them to that win. And so if he's 10% better than he was as a redshirt freshman last year, then look out.
Yeah, no doubt. And again, you got to have the QB to do it. And Lincoln Riley, number one, the most impressive thing to me about Lincoln Riley's system is how he's able to communicate it on the field. He'll look at the quarterback and do this and that, and it'll mean 13 different things, and everybody knows what it is. To me, that's one of his his best attributes. I know that's why a lot of NFL guys were running as fast as they could down there to figure out how the hell he's communicating all these things at rapid speed to the offense in a way where you can adjust, but it's not too much on the players, and that's the balance you're trying to find. Zach, last question for you, man. This has been a blast. I got to get you back. Is Steve Sarkisian, and we're saying the Big 12, got a little Big 12 flavor here and didn't even mean for it to happen, but does Steve Sarkisian bring Texas back? And what I mean by bringing Texas back is Texas winning 10 games a year, because I just don't understand how Texas cannot be dominant in college football and how Georgia is not dominant in college basketball. Don't understand it. Go.
That's a fair question. My response is I've lived in Texas my entire life. I went to Texas, so I'll admit I'm not a neutral third-party observer here. But the Texas job is a great job, but it's not without its pitfalls. It's not as good as you might think, just because recruiting in Texas is tricky, man. I mean, if you're Alabama, you can come in and take your pick and fill your needs and then leave and just get the guys you want. If you're Texas, you're constantly playing on defense. Every coach wants you to offer all their guys, and they're mad if you don't, and you can't possibly get every good player from Texas. No one's going to be mad at North Shore High School in Houston if LSU doesn't offer this guy, but they might be mad if Texas doesn't offer him. So it's a great job. Yes. Is it the best job in the country? I don't think so. That said, should Texas win 10 games every single season? Absolutely. I do think Sark will be that guy. I mean, to be completely frank with you, when I first heard that he was in the running, I thought, I could look good calling plays with that offense with those players. But, the more I've sunk my teeth into it, the more I've listened to him talk, I think they're getting a seasoned head coach. I think, first of all, they're getting, arguably the best play caller in the country, maybe with apologies to Lane Kiffin and Lincoln Riley. And, when you're a team that has to probably beat Lincoln Riley twice a season, it helps to not start from a play calling deficit. When you're going to have to outscore that offense, you need elite of the elite on your side of the ball calling your plays. And, Tom Herman, got the Texas job largely by what he did as Ohio State's offensive coordinator. But just for whatever reason, he just didn't feel like he could be the offensive coordinator and the play caller and the head coach all at once. Yeah. I think Sark is a step above him as a play caller. And I think, he's proven to be a step above Herman as a program builder. If you told me that he would get Pete Kwiatkowski as his defensive coordinator, I thought that was the guy that was going to retire at Washington. So to get him, to bring Blake Gideon back as, your young guy recruiting, a guy with a lot of connections in the Texas high school community, to pull Terry Joseph out of Notre Dame, Jeff Choate, an FCS head coach, to come be a position coach for you. His staff's really good. I think he's honest about himself, honest about, where he's been, where he is in his career. I think he knows that, if this doesn't work out, he's not getting a third chance to be a Power 5 head coach.
Yeah. No, 100%.
And so I think they're getting the right guy at the right time. And his hiring was a really un-Texas move in a lot of ways, because Texas, in any sport, they don't hire position coach, or they don't hire assistant coaches. You pretty much have to be a sitting head coach to be even considered to be a Texas head coach. And so that weird Texas attitude kind of works against them in a lot of ways. And so to take a risk in a little bit in hiring obviously he had previous head coaching experience, but to hire a sitting coordinator, I think shows confidence on their end that they know what they want. They know what it takes to get there. And I think institutionally, I think Texas is really just done, screwing around. Their leadership at the presidential level on the board, I think it's all systems go to get it back to where it was across the board athletically, in the early 2000s, when the glory days of Mac and Augie and Rick Barnes. So long story longer, I think Sark is the guy, starting with his own play calling and then building up from there for a lot of different reasons. But I do think Texas is going to be back sooner than later.
Yeah, and man, I would just love to see the dueling game plans that Lincoln Riley and Steve Sarkisian put together against each other. I mean, that's going to be worth its weight in gold. Yeah. And to further one of the points you made in there, if you go back and watch the national championship game, Steve Sarkisian was dialing it up. He really was. Well, what they were doing against Ohio State, and man, the packages he put together, the way he was kind of able to go rogue with some of the guys with the orbit motion, I thought was great, especially in the red zone. And that's what happens when you have an innovative thinker. And I feel like Steve Sarkisian's the guy that he's not going to go in there and give the pregame speech like Braveheart that gets everybody run out of the locker room. He needs to be in his office, coming up with the game plan, implementing it, working with the quarterbacks, getting the chemistry right, and doing the other head coaching things. But I think if he can stay in that lane, they'll have a lot of success on offense. But Zach, man, great stuff. I appreciate you joining us. We're definitely going to do this again. Tell everybody where they can find your content that we talked about earlier and where they can find you on social media as well.
yeah, just at Football Scoop, we just redesigned the website. And should hopefully look nice and clean and pretty for everybody. And then I'm on Twitter at Zach, ZACH_Barnett.
Definitely, man. Well, I'm going to get you back on to talk some more Texas, man, especially during the year. We'll see how the Steve Sarkisian hire goes year one. I know it's a transition, but they have some talent there. But I really appreciate you, Zach. Appreciate you guys as well. Make sure you subscribe, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, however you're listening to us. Head to the Jboyshow.com and get some merchandise. The gray hoodie, it's the move. It's the move, I promise. But for Zach Barnett, I'm Jake Crain from the Jboy Show, and we're gone.
The Jboy Show is produced by David Cohn, Technical Director Dave Hammock, Creative Director David Culbertson, Audio Engineer Feyzan Shareef, Production Assistants Blaine Crain and Kyle Orr, Executive Producers Jake Crain, Vince Thompson, Steve Chamberlain, and David Cohn. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel and visit our website, thejboyshow.com, for updates regarding our newest apparel and merch designs. Win the water cooler with the Jboy Show.